iDS Talks is a podcast dedicated to helping corporations and law firms find new and effective ways to leverage data, giving them a decisive advantage both in and out of the courtroom.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of iDS Talks. My name is Jonathan Sachs, Chief Revenue Officer at iDS, and I'm joined today by Jon Hurwitz, Senior Managing Consultant and Team Lead in our Analytics Group. We're here today to talk to you, for me to talk to him, about data layers of truth, the power of multiple sources. Jon, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Jonathan. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Great. Yeah, I'm really excited about this one. One of the things that really drew me to iDS many years ago was what we do with structured data and how disparate data types could be essentially layered to tell a story. And so I'm personally excited about today, and we're going to jump right in with my first question, which is, why is relying on a single data source often insufficient in legal analytics?
Great question. When you think about that, when we're trying to analyze data, what it comes down to really is trying to paint a picture of a specific fact pattern. So what was happening on a specific day or a specific series of days. And when we're trying to paint that picture, if we've got one data source, it's really only telling a part of the story. So when we're able to layer on multiple data sources, it paints a much richer picture as far as what's going on in an employee's day. So that completeness is definitely one major aspect of that. The second piece is it allows us to do comparisons. So when we are bringing in one data source, it's telling us one story, but do we know if that's reliable or not? If I'm bringing in additional data sources, I can either find data sources that are supporting that other data source, giving us confidence in a fact pattern, but I may also find data sources that are challenging or in conflict with that other data source.
Interesting.
And perhaps that allows us to change or pivot on the narrative if we're seeing contradictions across the data.
Now, this may be an obvious question, but if when I have one single data source, it's easy enough to see. When you take multiple data sources, I'm assuming you can look at them all separately, but can you also, layer them on top of each other and see a more complex story? Do you have the onion and then you can peel back the layers?
Yeah, definitely. If you kind of think about, a phrase that we often like to use is the day in the life. We're trying to reconstruct a day in the life because oftentimes these data sources are capturing usually some sort of human activity. And so once we start layering additional data sources, we can start seeing what is occurring at different times of the day, in what durations, in what sequence. And sometimes, is there inactivity or lack of data between data sources? So layering all that data together just gives us a rich picture and a rich fact pattern of what was occurring at a given point in time.
Got it. So you've talked about a day in life, and maybe you're going to talk about that in relation to the question I'm about to ask you, but can you give the listeners an example where combining data from different systems has revealed key evidence?
Absolutely. One of the types of data sources we've been using quite a bit lately are records from an individual's mobile phone data. And from that mobile phone data, it's not so much the nature of the communications as far as who are you calling, what were you texting, but really the locations captured from the cell towers. So when you're making a call, when you're sending a text message, sometimes the cell tower is captured and we can place that phone within a location with a reasonable degree of confidence. And the way that we've been using that are in cases where an individual's claimed to be at a certain location, maybe a job site or a place where they've got client meetings. But when we layer in what the mobile phone tells us, we can see that they were either there or maybe they were somewhere else altogether. And we had a case very recently involving an employee who was terminated from their position, and they had initiated a lawsuit against their former employer for wrongful termination. One of the reasons why they were terminated is there were complaints. This individual was a sales rep for a medical device company, and the customers were complaining that they hadn't seen this person coming out to meet with them. This person was supposed to go out to different hospitals and medical facilities to have these meetings. And so what we did in this case is we took the employees' records from Salesforce, which captured all of their sales activity, and particularly when they were supposed to be meeting with different clients in states. This was kind of in the West Coast. This employee was based out of Los Angeles, and they routinely were supposed to travel up to Northern California, Washington, Oregon, Colorado to meet with the sales reps. And we could see in the Salesforce that in a lot of days they had meetings out of state. When we brought in the mobile data and overlaid it against what the Salesforce records were showing, we were seeing on about almost 2/3 of the days where this person was supposed to be meeting out of state, they hadn't left like 5 miles of their home.
Oh, wow.
The person was based, and they weren't going out for these meetings. They worked from home. But we saw quite a bit of inconsistency as far as the person, when they were supposed to be meeting, actually appeared per the mobile device, had kind of been fabricating these records and hadn't left their house. So when we showed that to our attorneys, they were pretty excited about what that data showed, because it really supported their case and showed that the plaintiff in the case likely was not being entirely truthful.
It does not sound like it.
Yeah.
So then, what are the main analytical challenges that you encounter when integrating multiple data sources?
Yeah. So bringing data together, sometimes when data in its raw form from different sources can be kind of like comparing apples and oranges. And our objective is to make it so that we can translate the data so that we're comparing apples and apples. Two of the very common ways that we need it, or things that we need to account for when we're combining different disparate data. One are time zones. So a lot of data that we analyze has a significant time component. We're very interested in when things were occurring. And based off of the data source, we might get it in the employee's local time. We might get it in UTC. Sometimes everything will be in Eastern. And if we're comparing the sequence in which things are occurring, it's vital that we are aligning things so that we're in the same time zone. So that's one of the first things that we have to account for. Another really common issue that we come across is differences in employee aliases. So Jonathan, you might be Jonathan Sachs in one data source. You might be J Sachs 3 in another. Figuring out those relationships so we know which employee, how they're represented in each source, and lining that all up. There's a lot of the work that we need to do up front. A third type of challenge that we come across is when we are analyzing certain data that might represent discrete events happening at one point in time with data that has a duration aspect. So like the length of a phone call, length of a meeting. When we see that, we need to kind of figure out, is there a precedence? Does one overrule the other? How do we kind of account for those conflicts? Those are things that we need to address when we start trying to figure out what was going on and what the data is telling us.
Yeah. Wow. So it's one thing to layer the data. It's another to correlate information across the layers. So can you spend some time talking to us about how the iDS analytics team leverages tools to do that, to correlate information across data layers?
Absolutely. So a lot of the work that we do, we use some common data manipulation languages. I'd say the bulk we use Microsoft SQL Server, and we write scripts. SQL or SQL is a language for manipulating structured data. And so a lot of times once we get data, we ingest it into our databases, and then we leverage SQL scripts to start making sense of it. We also use some open source languages, namely R and Python, to sometimes handle tasks that SQL isn't as well suited for. When it comes to visualization, we use a variety of tools to help kind of make the data come to life. A lot of people, it's one thing to see data in a series of, rows and columns, but when we can visually demonstrate it through charts or even maps, it adds a lot of power to, as far as how we can interpret it. And so we'll use visualization tools like Power BI, Amazon QuickSight. We've used Tableau at times. So those are some of the commercial tools. We also have some custom tools that we've built in-house. When you work with the data analytics, you tend to find there are a lot of kind of recurring tasks around data ingest, data export. So we've got a whole library of custom tools to handle different data types and allow us to kind of ingest them in bulk, bring them into our databases efficiently, but then also export them for downstream consumption. Then lastly, we also have developed a platform in-house called XIoT, which is a tool that we use to kind of help bring together data and then ultimately present it. And one of the functions in XIoT is really the ability to kind of visually show a profile of an employee's kind of data snapshot. So we can go into this tool. It's a web-based tool, and we can, once we've got all our data ingested, we can kind of go employee by employee and go day by day and see a day in the life chart showing what activities they were engaged in at different times of the day. If we've got GPS data, we can click and see a map of where they were on that day and in what sequence they were going to different locations. And we can also see some high-level metrics around what their data footprint looks like with regards to hours of the day when their data footprint is more present, min and max dates. So it really allows us to get a pretty rich picture, of all the individuals in our data sources.
Well, the lawyer in me, which is buried somewhere deep down, as it's been 2 decades since I practiced law, really does see the value in those visualizations. It's one thing to get a spreadsheet, see the information, as you said, in columns and rows, but to be able to visually see it, understand what happened, that's what's, I think, so much more impactful. And so having those kind of tools, I can only imagine, and you'll let me know, when the lawyers hear about the data, it's one thing, but to actually see it through a tool like XIoT is almost eye-opening for them.
Yeah. The specifically the maps tend to resonate very strongly, and then the day in the life diagrams, which are for folks who can't see, they kind of resemble like a Gantt chart where we've got different hours of the day, and we've got kind of bars or dots showing when a given activity was occurring.
Yeah, you see the periods of activity, the periods of inactivity. You're able to then total up the amount of inactivity during the course of a day. Someone claims that they're working 40 hours a week, and in reality, they're working 23 because you've got these gaps that are unexplained.
Yeah, it allows us to really efficiently demonstrate, when an employee is and is not working. So we can quickly see, when are they starting on average? When are they ending their day on average? How often are they working in the evening? And if they are working in the evening, is it a discrete sending off an email for a minute, or is it a continuous stream of activity over a couple hours?
Right. Got it. All right. So here's last question. I want you to pull out that crystal ball that you have. And I want to ask you this. How will data layers of truth, I call them, evolve in legal analytics, and what should listeners consider?
So I was thinking about this one. One of the themes that came to mind was when I got started in this field, for a decade ago. You used to often hear kind of this data revolution in the context of the three V's. So that was volume, so size of data, velocity, so the pace at which data is coming in, and then third one, variety. So there's just a lot of different types of data. You think of text, audio, images, just a lot of sources that can be generating data. So I think that third one, variety, is what's going to continue to evolve over, the past few years. Here you see new technology platforms, new methods of communication, new ways that people are interacting with one another. All of those systems is generating the data footprint. It's generating data that is a candidate for analysis. We gave a colleague of mine, we gave a pitch to a car insurance company a few weeks ago about kind of some of the implications with automobiles. And in the context of that, we're doing some research as far as just today's cars now are generating so much data with all the different technology and sensors that they have in them. So I think one piece that's going to evolve is just the expansion and continued variety of data that's getting generated that's going to be relevant, in a given case. I think the second piece, which, AI is always in the news, that's going to disrupt every single industry. I think with regards to data analytics, I think AI, specifically in the context of data reliability, is going to be an interesting issue. Two recent cases where we used AI in various capacities. One was a case where we were collecting a lot of data from different mobile devices to determine when these individuals or these plaintiffs were using different types of apps on their phone. And some of these folks had hundreds of different applications installed. And the attorneys were interested in which applications were games versus social media versus maybe education, versus audio or video streaming, things like that. And we didn't get that information. When we pulled the data from the devices, the tool we used did a very kind of rudimentary classification, but it wasn't robust enough. So one of the things we did was we plugged in all these application names into an AI, a publicly available AI model, had the AI model classify them all. And when we presented this to the attorneys, they were very much, we're not comfortable with that. We want to have a team of attorneys review these hundreds of applications on our own and classify them. So that's what they did, which again, I understand. But that's the thing, that in the future, if there's thousands of applications, you've got to weigh the trade-off as far as, do we trust the AI algorithms to get it right? Were we better off investing that human time to review them? Another use case that came up recently is I'm working on another case where I've got these employees who were whose job was to go out to different locations and inspect different sites for like underground utilities and things like that. And so one of the data sources we got was their vehicle data, which showed GPS locations of where their trucks were historically at given points in time. But the issue is that the timestamps for those coordinates were in UTC, and these employees could have been in multiple different time zones. And so it was really important to know where that truck was in that employee's local time. In taking those coordinates and identifying time zones, there's some tools out there that can do it, but I was left with a population of coordinates that were near, I guess, very small cities, which there just wasn't a good database to know what time zone that city was. So I tried using some AI tools. And the first AI tool, I fed in a bunch of this data, and I'd say probably 89% of these data points were in Texas, but Texas can have multiple time zones. And when I put them into the A model gave me the results, and I was looking over them, and the AI classified every single data point as in central time, even though if you eyeballed it, you could see certain data points were clearly not in central time.
Oh, okay.
And I asked the AI model, why did you do that? It was like, well, I started looking at it, and every record in like the first 5,000 was in Texas. So I called them all Central Time,
Oh,
even though there were, probably over 100,000 data points in there. I used another AI algorithm, and it gave me a much more complete analysis. But this idea that just, AI being ground truth, there's still a lot with regards to how humans need to interact with those algorithms and how we still need to be um, we still need to scrutinize the results. And one of the themes that I've found is always important in this line of work is this idea of skepticism. Being a data skeptic, whenever you get data, whatever you are told about it, perform an independent review, perform an independent validation, test assumptions. I don't think those traits are going to go away anytime soon.
yeah. Wow. Well, listen, Jon, you did not disappoint. I was looking forward to this podcast. I learned a lot. You've now got me thinking about a lot. So thank you for joining me today. I'd also like to thank our regular subscribers and those that may be first-time listeners for spending your time with us. If you'd like to learn more about IDS or you want to subscribe to our IDS Talks podcast, you can visit idsinc.com or go wherever you normally get your podcasts from. If you are watching this on YouTube, go ahead and like and subscribe. Thank you again for joining us, and I look forward to talking more about data with you on our next edition of IDS Talks.